Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Barry Landau, welcoming you to the fourth annual Malaysia Bromeliad Fair. I want to congratulate you for continuing to produce this marvelous show. And I would just like to make a few comments about bromeliads in general and the conservation and current situation of bromeliads in the habitats around Central and South America, and would also like to make some comments about your local bromeliad growers and collectors. Anyways, so I started Planet Bromeliad, which is a public group on Facebook back in 2010, because I foresaw a growing need to have a place for not only older bromeliad collectors to gather and talk about the plants, but somewhere to attract young new growers and to have a place where people could get identifications or find out cultural procedures, cultural habits, how to grow the plants. And that's done very well. It's Planet Bromeliad on the screen behind me, and it's worked out very well. We've been able to pull in about 45,000 members, and they converse and talk. Then we also created Planet Tillandsia. Well, I created 300 different planets, not all about bromeliads, obviously. But it's been very successful in promoting bromeliads to new collectors around the world. So, anyways, to go on to talk about the current conservation and conditions of the native bromeliads and tillandsias in Central South America, we're at a point where things are not real good, folks. You know, as you well know, climate change continues to go on, and it's this is a science established for 100 years, the sequestering or the depositing of CO2 into the atmosphere. This is not some kind of theory, or it's all that is people who are being paid to deny, climate deniers. Anyways, the habitats continue to degrade. What we have is there's a problem is that we've changed the rain cycle and the total water cycle of most of Central America and South America. And that is one aspect of the degradation of habitats. The other biggest forces in degrading and killing habitats is, of course, human encroachment, and then human the theft of plants, the taking of plants from the environment illegally poaching plants. They call it extractivism. And what's been happening is that some of the rarest tillandsias in parts of Brazil that were, unknown, unavailable, have been poached and have been severely degraded. So it's not a good, I don't have a good story for you on the conservation end. Things are progressively getting worse. And part of that is that people around the world are willing to pay for illegally gotten stolen tillandsias and pay very high amounts of money. So we've got a continuing loss of the habitat and a continuing loss of the populations in that habitat. So we've got to all of us get together and refuse to buy stolen tillandsias. That's the only way this is going to stop, because I know everybody wants the next best tillandsia, but until they set up some nurseries in Brazil itself to propagate these plants and sell them legally, we really should resist buying poached plants. And, I mean, this situation with the water cycle is so severe. The uh, the Amazon forest itself has been so degraded that now even Sao Paulo and Rio de Janeiro, the cities in the south of Brazil, are having severe droughts because they're not getting the proper yearly rain during the rainy season. So between the soya farming and the illegal gold mining and the illegal logging and legal logging, the growing of soya and the growing of cattle and the degradation of the forest itself is on a huge scale to the point where it has changed the way that the previous atmospheric river, which used to faithfully bring billions of gallons of water in terms in rainfall, conveyor itself to the south of Brazil, is no longer working. So we don't know what the long-term effects of this are, but I can tell you it's not going to be good. So the problem is we as humans have changed the world. There's something like 65 million tons of CO2 goes to the atmosphere every day, not every year, every day. So, we've got a big challenge ahead of us in the bromeliad world. And I think, as collectors and as growers, we're doing something right in preserving the populations in our collections. I know that sounds crazy. It sounds sort of at odds with the other points I'm making. But for plants that are already in cultural, in reproduction and propagation in nurseries and in collections, it's a good thing because many of those plants no longer exist in their original habitats. All right, so here's what my message of hope. It's incredible to see these societies and shows like your Malaysia show, where the growing of the plants is such a high quality. I can tell you honestly that I see, at least when I've looked at the photos of the plants that are in the shows that are on Facebook, I'm pleasantly surprised to see how high quality the growing these healthy, beautiful plants, bromeliads, being grown by people all over Malaysia and Southeast Asia. It's very impressive, and it makes me happy that these, the societies exist and what they're doing. And Gundamami, your person who put together this fair, sent me some photos, but it was very difficult to pull them down and download them. He sent them in Messenger, and it's difficult to push them across. But anyways, go to Facebook. You can find the Malaysia Bromeliads of Malaysia, or Malaysia Bromeliad Society website, and there's also Malaysia Tillandsia. And again, I really want to commend you folks for putting on such a marvelous show. It's the amount of species, and amount of hybrids, and the way they're being grown is very impressive. And so, anyways, here's the thing I want to impress upon you, for you people attending the show and participants, as well as anybody who's currently watching the video well after the show is over. It's so important that every collector who is interested in bromeliads take the time to make themselves familiar with local youths, local plant societies, we need to spread the interest of these plants. You need to be getting your neighbors, your relatives, your children, or your nieces or nephews, get them excited about these plants so that they will start growing them. And there's always enough pups or offsets every year for you to be generous with your plants. And I mean, it's important to give away plants, even if they're just the lower quality, whatever you've got in your garden that you can give extra. I need you to find young people at your local high school or through your local nursery. Find people to give plants to, get them started, and it will come back to you. They will eventually get interested and maybe buy other plants from your collection. But this kind of outreach is so important because as the natural habitats are decimated, and it's up to us collectors to maintain bromeliads on a large scale. There aren't that many nurseries that specialize in bromeliads. I know you have a few in Malaysia and other places in Southeast Asia, but these are small, mom and pop personal operations. So the only hope for bromeliads in the long term is for the dedicated collectors like you and me to spend time, propagate the plants in our collections, give them away, have shows or fairs like you do where you sell them, and try to get a new young audience of teenagers and people in their 20s and 30s interested in these plants. They're some of the most amazing plants on earth, and they have the most variety, the most interesting forms and shapes and colors of almost any plant family. And it's the life cycle. It's such an interesting life cycle. Now, many people get negative about the life cycle because all bromeliads follow a very common thread through their metabolic life cycle. They start as seeds. Now, seed to adult can take a long time. That can take 5 to 20 years, depending on what species or what genus. But once you have an adult bromeliad, what it does is it blooms after 2 to 3 years. The bloom dies, the father plant dies, but there are always pups or offsets, vegetative offsets that grow from the base of the plant. And this is what we call pups. And pups are what build a collection. And if you're a dedicated collector like me, the pups and the plants you propagate will push you out of your house. They're that prolific over time. So yes, it's a long life cycle that involves the death of the parent, what we call monocarpic. But monocarpic plants technically only go to seed. The vast majority of bromeliads will create vegetative offsets or pups, and those can be taken off the plant once they're 2/3 the size of the parent, and you pop them up and you're on your way. So the plants lend themselves to the long-term propagation of the collection of the plants you have, which gives you ample plants to be able to give or sell or trade with other collectors. And there's always new plants and new hybrids being made that make their way from the West, from places in America and South America to Southeast Asia slowly. It's a very slow process. And, some of the best bromeliads, some of the best hybrids are those created by my friend Chester Skotak. And Chester's been making crosses and hybrids for 40 years. And he's responsible for many of the best hybrids. And those eventually make their way. That's like Nergelia optimus prime and other plants like that are spectacular. So again, one of the reasons we collect bromeliads is their colors, their patterns, their forms, the stripes, the variegation, the albomargination. These are some of the most beautiful plants on earth. And they have an enduring quality. They hold their color, they hold their patterns, and very easy to care for with low water requirements. And they're just delightful plants. They're fun to collect, they're fun to give away. But again, as you get older, like I am, you will realize that having a collection of bromeliads, it's too important to find outlets to disperse the plants, to sell or give away the plants so that young people can become involved. And I task all of you, I put it upon your shoulders that if you are an avid collector, you must find young people to encourage to love these plants the way we do. All right. Well, so I was hoping to have a guest to introduce to you folks. A friend of mine, great friend of mine from Brazil, named Pedro Nahum, and he's on a trip on one of the big rivers, tributary rivers in the Amazon, and I lost contact with him. I was going to do a Zoom meeting and introduce him to you, but it's just hasn't worked out. So, but you can find Pedro on Facebook, Pedro Nahum, Nahum, Pedro Nahum. And he's a marvelous man. He's a nurseryman. He's a landscaper. He's got a farm. He's a bromeliad expert. He's a botanist. He's a great guy. And he's involved in the middle of the whole controversies down there in Brazil, trying to maintain the habitats and, working with the federal government to try to stop the theft of plants from the forest. But this is very difficult. It's a huge country. All right. Anyways, let me say this. I want to end on the note that I think the quality of the plants that you folks grow in Malaysia, quality of your bromeliads, is extremely high. It is world class. And want to encourage you to keep going. And love the fact that you have these annual shows. And that's a great way to get people involved. In fact, it's the number one way to bring in new collectors. Once they go to a bromeliad show and they see the variety of plants and how incredible the plants are, they almost automatically want to start a collection. So, but even if all they do is have 5 plants on the windowsill of their house, that's a great thing. All right, well, I'm glad you asked me to come here today to give a talk to you folks about what's happening in the bromeliad world. And I've enjoyed being here, and I absolutely enjoy seeing the photos from your shows that end up on Facebook. And, it's always a great thing to use your plants for social purposes, meaning make friends, have local plant clubs, produce the plants to be given or sold to other people. All right, I want to thank you for your attention, and I hope your show, your Malaysia Bromeliad Fair, ends up in a good way with a lot of people bringing plants to the show. Thank you so much. Barry Landau signing off.